Spider-Man 2 is considered to be one of the greatest movies of all time by a lot of people. Andrew Garfield's version, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, doesn't even come close to that level of awesome. Mark Ellis from Schmoes Know is joining me today, and he's foolishly defending this disaster of a follow-up. It's Spider-Man 2 versus The Amazing Spider-Man 2 on Movie Feuds. I think we can both agree that Toby Maguire is the superior Spider-Man. His constant struggles to live a normal life, the pain he feels, the uncertainty of his choices can all be seen through his vast facial expressions.
I really like Raimi's Spider-Man 2, and I like Toby Maguire, but when I see him, all I can think is this guy's desperately trying to not shit himself. He looks constipated through the whole movie.
He's not afraid to emote. Andrew Garfield gives us 2.5 hours of a GQ spread.
Besides having Axe hair gel commercial quality hair, he's got incredible range. He goes from being a nerdy, emotional teenager to a cocky, surefire web-slinger. And his voice doesn't do what I just did.
I fail to see how he was nerdy in the slightest, but his Spider-Man was pretty on fleek, I'll give you that. Kids still say that stupid phrase, right? Okay, good. My only gripe is he perhaps goofed off too much at times, where scenes should have been more dramatic.
So we have joking in this hand, or uncontrollable weeping through 3 movies in this hand. Sorry, righty, you've been good to me. I'm going with the left hand. And look, even if this franchise did have to rely solely on Andrew Garfield, it could work, but we also have the added dynamic of him and Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy. They're fantastic together. They should date in real. I just heard they are dating in real life.
My girl Kirsten Dunst is just given a piss-poor shake in the Sam Raimi films. Is she a strong, independent woman? Yeah, of course she is. It's just most people wouldn't hijack a squad car and drive it into a man made out of electricity.
That's all the invitation I need to segue into villains. Let's talk about Electro. Jamie Foxx is electric. Besides the really neat aesthetic with the blue glowy stuff he's got, it's really fun to watch him tear up a city. Not to mention Dane DeHaan's new take on the Green Goblin and Paul Giamatti's the Rhino. Come on, if you could see one guy overact as Rhino, who would you take over Paul Giamatti?
No one. 2004 gives us one truly remarkable villain with Dr. Octopus. He has an actual story arc with a fitting conclusion, and we can feel sympathy for him thanks to Alfred Molina's performance. Plus, nobody rocks a duster harder.
Well, I beg to differ there, good sir. See, in high school, I rocked a pretty mean duster myself. As a matter of fact, they called me Dusty the Clown. I was both a badass and a really funny comedian.
None of that sounded real.
None of it is, I can assure you. Moving on to the other performances in The Amazing Spider-Man Part 2, how about Sally Field? You have to mention Burt Reynolds' old flame as Aunt May. I doubt she's ever going to be topped in that role.
There is no denying the greatness that is Safe Faye, short for Sally Field, but I'm going to let Rosemary Harris do the talking for me. Travis, can we get a clip on that? Today, thanks.
I believe there's a hero in all of us.
First off, you have to earn the right to call her Safe-Face. Second of all, that was a low blow, dude.
I'd be beaten within an inch of my life if I didn't also mention J.K. Simmons' portrayal, brilliantly might I add, of j.jonah Jameson. The guy chews up every scene he's in and is solid in all 3 entries. Granted, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 also had its wonderful version of the character. I don't want to forget that. Oh wait, he's not f***ing in it.
His name shows up on some computer screens. So we got that going for us, which is nice. I like J.K. Simmons.
Spider-Man 2 is a story pretty much everyone can relate with.
Anyone with an erectile dysfunction, perhaps? Yes.
Go on.
Spider-Man 2 is a story about a guy having issues when he needs to perform. He can't summon his white sticky stuff on command like he used to be able to. You can see the path we're walking down. There's way too many screaming girls in this movie. There's more screaming chicks in this than When I Rock My Duster. It's like, is this about Spider-Man or the Beatles in 1964?
At least Toby had some obstacles to overcome. He has to hold a job, friendship, school, and crime fighting all at once sometimes. It would leave anybody a bit deflated.
Andrew's, I call him Andy, Andy's struggles are there in similar and even deeper ways because he's trying to find his place in the world while simultaneously wondering what actually happened to my parents. I thought it was really nice to further that story and get some closure on that from the first film.
I'd be fine with that if there wasn't 8 other stories taking place in tandem. Listen, a lot of people know I wasn't a big fan of the first Amazing Spider-Man, and by a lot I mean my mother, but the trailers early on looked like it had so much potential, and it was squandered. Wasted, left on the side of the road like a dead hooker. What we got was a bloated, poorly written, mismanaged second outing. These are some of the dumbest villains I've seen put on the big screen since Batman and Robin. Batman and Robin. At one point, Electro shows up with a custom-tailored, form-fitting blue suit with the lightning bolt down the side of the sleeve. Why? Why? Who made this? Why is this a thing?
Those aren't that hard to find. Have you been to a Dick's Sporting Goods recently? Under Armour's got some pretty inventive clothing lines. Here's where The Amazing Spider-Man 2 really shows its new coat of paint. Director Mark Webb totally nailed the action in this film, the exciting combat scenes, and Spidey slinging through the streets looks so much better than they did in Raimi's version. Now, he took a cue from Raimi when he showed the Spidey sense in slow motion, so it's a nod to that other inferior movie you're talking about.
Yeah, I agree. We had a nice boost 10 years later in the CGI department. I would hope we would. But the original is so much more creative, with fights on the sides of buildings, an impressive rumble on a high-speed train, and the web slinging is still top-notch. This is perhaps a side debate, but I also like that Raimi chose to go organic with the web shooters. It was more natural. It seemed something like a spider would have, you know, along with the climbing and the super senses. I know it was web shooters in the comic, but it just felt right here for me. It felt good.
Then shouldn't we get to see Slaughterhouse Rules shoot Webb out of his ass and not his wrists? He acted like it most of the time. We never really got to see the genius of Peter Parker in Raimi's trilogy, whereas with Andrew Garfield, you got to see him constantly have to adjust those web shooters based on his need at the time. That was sorely missing from the original trilogy.
Danny Elfman returns to perfect the score that was already almost perfect. If you bought the soundtrack, you're treated to some nice punk rock songs as a bonus, but the real winner here is the main theme song. The most I took away from The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was that the director, Mark Webb, who I assume changed his name so he could land this job, really liked Philip Phillips.
Well, it's not Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. That's for damn sure.
Raindrops keep falling on my head.
Sony pulled out the big guns and hired Hans Zimmer to do the score for Amazing Spider-Man 2. He collabed with some great hip-hop artists to make some really neat techno-electro kind of pulsating music when Electro was on screen. And look, I wasn't a fan of the during the credits music either, but at least my version doesn't have Nickelback in it.
The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is a full-blown circle jerk. There are some high points, yes, but the bad definitely outweighs the good here. The 2004 version is still the king. Great performances, intense action, and a beautiful score keep Spider-Man 2 as the superior flick.
Sam Raimi did an incredible job making 2.5 great Spider-Man movies, but like that cougar I met on Craigslist last week, even Spider-Man 2 is starting to show its age. Andrew Garfield is simply the superior Peter Parker. I really like Toby Maguire, but nobody has Andrew Garfield's combination of acting ability and sense of humor. Toby, you did great. Enjoy the rest of your life somewhere else. I mean, you can hang out in the city. I'm not kicking you out of the city, but...
Thanks for coming on, Mark. I can't imagine anything you'd rather be doing with your precious time other than rewatching The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now I want to hear from you, the viewer. Comment and vote below. Let me know your thoughts on these two movies. Head on over to Schmoes Know and like their channel if you like Mark Ellis. I don't know why you wouldn't. More than just reviews. This is Movie Feuds. Oh, and bashing Chad Kroeger, Mark? Grow up! He's a Canadian treasure. You could only be so lucky to be in the same room as him. Disrespectful.